Well, a very good afternoon to you all on the seventh day of national lockdown in South Africa. I am Mark Long, rector of the parish of St Andrews in Newlands, and speaking to you today from the rectory garden. As you can see, a lovely day in Cape Town. Wish we could be out on the beaches and the mountains, but at least to see it is great. A reflection on today's Eucharist readings, particularly the one from Genesis chapter 17, verses 3 to 9, a passage in which God is interacting with Abram. Abram has attempted to kind of make sure that God's plans for him come about, and he's had a child through his concubine, and Ishmael has been born. Isaac has not yet been born. And in between these two points, one in which Abram has really tried to work the story out from himself, and one in which God really does begin to take control, and Abraham relaxes more into God's purposes for his life, we have this little interlude in which God meets with him and affirms the covenant. And part of that affirmation is the name change from Abram to Abraham, and speaks of the specialness of that moment, and a shift, an important shift in Abraham's thinking at that particular point. And it strikes me in terms of where we find ourselves with this pandemic. South Africa in seventh day of our lockdown. We've seen the curve flatten somewhat, more I think because we've gained control of the external infections coming in from elsewhere. And some are worried that that might just be the calm before the storm as we begin to infect each other. And so being apart and staying home at this point becomes really important. But along with it is not just the pandemic itself, but also a pandemic of anxiety, I think, that goes with it. And one of the big challenges for us at this point is to handle both of those, and to really trust and rely on God in keeping us focused and keeping us calm. And to trust that, yes, there's a lot we can try to do ourselves, but just like Abram, we generally get ourselves into a tangle. And that point at which we actually sit back and really just allow God to do what God needs to do becomes so important. I'm not suggesting that means we put our feet up and do nothing. I think clearly we are God's hands and feet in our world, and we need to take that reality seriously. And dealing with the virus and things, we clearly need to take action as we're doing. But in the midst of it all, to be trusting that God really is present, and God will continue to be part of who we are in so many different ways. And at this particular point, to trust our future to God. Abraham was faced with that, and God's promise was that he would become the ancestor of many nations, not just one or two, but many. And we need to trust that God continues to have the interests of humankind in mind, and certainly our prayers are important in that. And so we continue to pray and remember particularly all those who continue to struggle with the disease, the many who seek to, in the front line of the healthcare with that. We think of people locked down in difficult living conditions, and perhaps even in difficult relationships in that space. And as we pray for that, we too just give thanks for the resources that we have and that God has given us. So have a good day further. God bless.